The first precursor site they visited was smaller than Marcus had expected, just a crystalline chamber about the size of a basketball court buried 50 feet beneath the surface. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence that seemed to respond to their presence, growing brighter as they descended the excavated stairway. "Remember," Dr. Yates said, adjusting the sensors strapped to his chest. "Any unusual sensations, thoughts that don't feel like your own, or visual disturbances should be reported immediately. We can pull you out if the exposure becomes too intense." Marcus nodded, checking his own equipment one last time. Beside him, Lirelei stood perfectly still, her eyes closed and her breathing slow and deep. She had been preparing herself mentally for the past hour, drawing on techniques the archive keepers used to sort through vast amounts of stored knowledge. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked softly. Lirelei opened her eyes and looked at him with an expression of calm determination. "The memories are clearer now. Being near this place, it awakens things I thought I had forgotten." They stepped across the threshold together, and Marcus immediately felt the change. The air seemed thicker, almost viscous, and every sound echoed with harmonics that hadn't been there before. More unsettling was the sensation that the walls themselves were watching them. Ancient intelligence pressed against the edges of his consciousness. "Fascinating," Lirelei murmured, moving toward the center of the chamber where a column of twisted crystal rose from floor to ceiling. "The resonance patterns are exactly as the archives described. This is a memory core." Marcus followed her, fighting the disorienting feeling that he was walking through someone else's dream. "Memory of what?" Instead of answering, Lirelei placed her hand against the crystal column. The moment her skin made contact, the chamber exploded into light. Marcus found himself standing not in an underground ruin, but on the surface of an alien world under a sky filled with 3 purple suns. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, covered with structures that defied conventional understanding of architecture. Buildings that existed in more dimensions than his eyes could process, connected by bridges of solid light that arced through the air like frozen lightning. "The first builders," Lirelei's voice came from beside him, though when he turned she looked different. Taller, with skin that shimmered like starlight and eyes that held the depth of galactic clusters. "This is how they saw their world. You're seeing this too?" Marcus asked, though he somehow knew the answer. "I am seeing through their eyes, through the memories preserved in this crystal." Lirelei gestured toward the impossible city. "They were not builders of technology as we understand it. They were architects of reality itself." The scene shifted, and they were standing in what might have been a laboratory or temple. Beings that looked like living mathematics moved between structures that existed in states of constant transformation. One of them approached, and Marcus felt knowledge flowing into his mind without words or images. They were dying, not from war or disease, but from the fundamental nature of their existence. They had transcended physical limitations so completely that they were losing their connection to the material universe. Each generation became more abstract, more removed from the solid reality that anchored consciousness. "They knew," Lirelei said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Marcus's bones. "They knew they would fade from the universe entirely unless they found a way to preserve not just their knowledge, but their ability to affect the physical world." The vision shifted again, showing vast machines being constructed across thousands of worlds. Not machines as humans would build them, but living networks of crystal and quantum energy that could interface directly with biological minds. "Inheritance engines," Marcus understood suddenly. They were building a way for other species to carry on their work. "Not carry on," Lirelei corrected. "Evolve." Each species that interfaced with their technology would add its own understanding, its own perspective. Over millions of years, the combination would produce beings capable of existing in both physical and abstract reality. The vision began to fade, and Marcus found himself back in the underground chamber. Lirelei had removed her hand from the crystal, but her eyes still held traces of that otherworldly depth. "The missing research team," she said quietly. "I know where they went." Dr. Yates and his monitoring crew were practically vibrating with excitement as they extracted data from the sensors. Incredible! Your neural patterns synchronized completely during the experience. We've never seen anything like it. Marcus ignored them, focusing on Lirelei. What did you see that I didn't? Coordinates, she replied. Not to a place, but to a state of being. The researchers found the central node, the place where all the inheritance engines connect. But accessing it required them to abandon their physical forms. They're dead? Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's cool air. Not dead, translated, converted into quantum patterns that exist within the network itself. Lirelei turned to face him fully, and Marcus was relieved to see her eyes had returned to normal. They can be brought back, but only if someone can interface with the central node without losing themselves to it. Over the following days, they visited 12 more sites, each one revealing another piece of the precursor puzzle. Marcus began to understand why previous teams had been overwhelmed by the experience. The inheritance engines weren't just repositories of knowledge, they were actively trying to teach, to transform anyone who interfaced with them. But he and Lirelei had something the others lacked. When the alien knowledge threatened to wash away his sense of self, her mind was there to anchor him. When the vast scope of precursor technology overwhelmed her consciousness, his tactical thinking provided structure and focus. You're becoming something new, Dr. Voss observed during one of their debriefing sessions. The neural scans show patterns we've never seen in baseline humans. It's as if the precursor technology is adapting to work with your specific mental configuration. Marcus looked at Lirelei across the briefing table. Over the past week, he had begun to notice changes in both of them. His reflexes were faster, his thinking clearer. More importantly, he could sense her thoughts at the edges of his consciousness. A warm presence that felt as natural as his own heartbeat. The question, Voss continued, is whether you're ready to attempt the central node. Our missing colleagues have been in quantum translation for over a month. Much longer, and the pattern degradation may become irreversible. What exactly are the risks? Marcus asked. Dr. Yates consulted his data tablets. Based on what we've learned from the smaller sites, the central node contains the accumulated knowledge and consciousness of the entire precursor civilization. Interfacing with it directly could result in complete personality dissolution. Your minds would be absorbed into the collective and cease to exist as individuals. Or, Voss added, you could emerge with capabilities that fundamentally change what it means to be human. The choice is yours. That night, Marcus and Lirelei sat in their quarters, watching the alien stars wheel across the sky through their window. They had been on Kelios Prime for 2 weeks, and Marcus was surprised to realize he had never felt more at home anywhere. Regrets? He asked softly. Lirelei curled closer to him on the couch, her head resting against his shoulder. About coming here? About agreeing to this insane mission? About falling in love with a human who treats alien widows as equals instead of burdens? She smiled up at him. None whatsoever. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. They hadn't spoken about the feelings that had been growing between them, the connection that went deeper than their shared experiences with precursor technology. I love you too, he said simply. Which is why I need to know you're absolutely certain about tomorrow. We don't have to do this. We could take one of the research ships and disappear into the outer systems. Start over somewhere else. Lirelei sat up, turning to face him fully. And abandon those researchers to dissolution? Leave the inheritance engines for the Council to exploit? She shook her head. Yarek died because he couldn't walk away when people needed help. I will not dishonor his memory by being less brave than he was. This isn't about bravery, Marcus protested. It's about survival, about having a future together. What future? Lirelei asked gently. As fugitives? As exiles? Marcus, the precursors didn't build these machines to trap people. They built them to free us from the limitations of single-species thinking. Tomorrow, we have the chance to become something greater than either human or astral reaches. We can become ourselves, but more. Marcus looked into her dark eyes and saw not just love, but absolute certainty. Together? always together. The central node lay 3 miles beneath the surface, accessible only through a shaft that descended into the planet's molten core. The chamber itself existed in a state of controlled space-time distortion that allowed it to be much larger inside than outside. As Marcus and Lirelei descended in the research pod, they could see the node through the transparent aluminum viewing port. It looked like a galaxy in miniature, spirals of crystalline energy rotating around a central core that pulsed with the rhythm of a vast heartbeat. Neural interfaces are stable, Dr. Yates reported over the comm. Quantum field generators are holding. The facility on Kalios Prime was anything but abandoned. As Marcus and Lirelei stepped off the transport, they found themselves facing a complex of gleaming metal buildings that hummed with active power systems. Automated defense turrets tracked their movement from concealed positions, and the air carried the distinctive ozone smell of active shield generators. Well, Marcus muttered, shouldering his pack. Either the galaxy's most industrious squatters have been busy, or we've been played. Before Lirelei could respond, a figure emerged from the main building's entrance. Marcus's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, then stopped as he recognized the uniform of a Galactic Fleet quartermaster. The alien, a tall, thin being with gray skin and 4 arms, approached with the unhurried gait of someone completely at home in their environment. "Captain Chin, I presume?" The quartermaster said in accented but clear English. "I am Procurement Officer Kethver. Welcome to Research Station Omega-7. Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Lirelei before responding. "I think there's been some mistake. We were assigned to establish a mining survey operation on an abandoned world." Kethver's expression was unreadable, but Marcus caught what might have been amusement in the alien's large, dark eyes. "Yes, I am sure that is what you were told. Please, follow me. Director Voss is eager to meet you both." They followed the quartermaster through corridors lined with laboratories and workshops that were clearly in active use. Marcus counted at least 30 different species among the beings they passed, all wearing the unmarked gray uniforms of classified research personnel. "Quite a mining operation you've got here," Marcus observed dryly. "Indeed," Kethver replied without breaking stride. "We mine knowledge, Captain. A far more valuable commodity than simple minerals." The director's office occupied the top floor of the central tower, with panoramic windows offering views of the surrounding landscape. Unlike the barren wasteland described in their briefing, Kalios Prime stretched out before them in a tapestry of purple grasslands and silver forests that seemed to shift and flow in the alien sunlight. Director Voss stood with her back to the door, silhouetted against the vast windows. When she turned, Marcus was surprised to find himself looking at a human woman who appeared to be in her 40s, with prematurely gray hair and eyes the color of Arctic ice. "Captain Chun," she said, extending a hand in the traditional Earth greeting. "Dr. Sarah Voss, Director of Zevorchaeology for the Galactic Research Division. And you must be Lirelei of the Astral Reaches." Lirelei inclined her head formally. "Director." Voss gestured for them to sit in chairs arranged around a low table set with what appeared to be Earth coffee and some kind of alien pastry. "I imagine you have questions about your actual assignment." "1 or 2, Marcus said, accepting a cup of coffee with genuine gratitude. "Starting with why we were told this place was abandoned when it's clearly a major research facility." "Because," Voss replied, settling into her own chair, "what we're doing here requires absolute secrecy. The Galactic Council cannot know about Project Genesis, and your arrival provides us with the perfect cover story." She activated a holographic projector built into the table, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the planet's surface. Red markers indicated dozens of sites scattered across the continents. "Kalios Prime was never a mining world," Voss continued. "That was a cover story created 30 years ago when we discovered something extraordinary in the planet's crust. Lirelei, you may find this particularly interesting given your background." The hologram zoomed in on one of the markers, revealing what looked like a vast crystalline structure buried deep underground. Marcus leaned forward, studying the geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. What am I looking at? He asked. Precursor ruins, Voss said quietly. The most extensive find in galactic history. Structures that predate the oldest known civilizations by millions of years, built by beings whose technology we're only beginning to understand. Lireley made a soft sound of recognition. The astral archives spoke of such things. Legends of the first builders who walked between stars before our ancestors learned to make fire. Not legends, Voss said with satisfaction. Very real and very dangerous. Which brings us to why you're here. The hologram shifted to show another site, this one closer to the surface. Unlike the geometric precision of the other ruins, this structure looked organic, almost alive. Branching passages twisted through the rock like the root system of some enormous tree. 6 months ago, we breached the outer chamber of Site Omega-12. Within hours, every piece of electronic equipment within a kilometer radius began exhibiting strange behavior. Communication systems picked up signals from empty space. Computers started running programs they'd never been loaded with. Worst of all, several research teams reported ... experiences. Marcus didn't like the way she said that word. What kind of experiences? Shared dreams. Visions of alien worlds and impossible technologies. Some of the affected personnel claimed they could understand languages they'd never heard before. A few even demonstrated knowledge of precursor mathematical concepts that we'd spent years trying to decipher. Voss paused to take a sip of her coffee, her expression troubled. The effect was temporary for most species, fading after a few days of isolation from the site. But humans were different. Different how? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to suspect he knew where this was heading. Human neural patterns seem uniquely compatible with whatever the precursors left behind. 3 of our human researchers volunteered to make direct contact with the site's central chamber. They emerged with perfect understanding of precursor technology, capable of activating and controlling devices we couldn't even identify. Lireley shifted in her chair, her dark eyes fixed intently on the hologram. Where are these researchers now? Voss's expression darkened. Missing. They disappeared 3 weeks ago during a routine survey mission. Their last transmission indicated they had discovered something significant, but the signal cut off before they could elaborate. Marcus set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. And you think I can find them? We think you can do much more than that, Voss replied. Captain, your military record makes for fascinating reading. 37 successful rescue operations, including several in hostile alien environments. More importantly, you've demonstrated an unusual ability to adapt to alien technologies and form working relationships with non-human species. She gestured toward Lireley. Your current companion is a perfect example. The Arbitration Council expected you to treat her as a burden, a constant reminder of your punishment. Instead, you've already begun treating her as a partner. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. She's not property. She's a person who lost everything and deserves better than being used as a punishment for someone else's crimes. Precisely, Voss said with approval. That attitude is exactly why we recommended you for this assignment. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus stared at the director, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. You arranged this. The arbitration, the assignment, all of it. The incident on Kepler Station was genuine, Voss said carefully. Your actions in saving those lives were admirable but inconvenient for certain political factions. However, when the Arbitration Council began discussing your punishment, we saw an opportunity. She activated another section of the hologram, showing detailed schematics of the underground ruins. We need someone capable of navigating precursor technology without losing themselves to it. Someone with the tactical skills to survive in a hostile environment and the moral flexibility to work with beings the rest of the galaxy considers expendable. Lireley spoke for the first time since the briefing began, her voice carefully neutral. And you believe my presence serves some purpose in this scheme? Voss turned to her with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. My dear, you are not an incidental addition to this team. The astral reaches were destroyed, yes, but your people possessed one of the most extensive archives of precursor lore in the galaxy, knowledge that died with your world, except for what survived in the memories of those who studied it. I am not a scholar, Lirelei protested. I was merely the mate of a communications officer. You were a keeper of the astral archives, Voss countered. Your marriage to Yarek required you to undergo the ritual of shared memory, didn't it? The process that allows archive keepers to pass their knowledge to their spouses in case of emergency? Marcus watched Lirelei's face go pale, her hands clenching involuntarily in her lap. How could you know about that? Because we've been watching you for some time, Voss admitted. When your world fell, you became one of the last repositories of precursor knowledge in the galaxy. Knowledge we desperately need if we're going to understand what we found here. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. So you arranged for her husband to be killed and her to be assigned as my burden so you could exploit whatever she knows? Voss held up a hand. We did not arrange Yarek's death. That was the result of his own conscience and the callousness of his commanding officer. But when the opportunity arose to bring both of you here, she shrugged. We would have been fools not to take advantage of it. The office fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers and the... Captain Marcus Chun stood at attention in the pristine white chamber of the Galactic Arbitration Council, his hands clasped behind his back as alien voices debated, his fate in languages that sounded like grinding metal and whistling wind. The translator implant behind his ear worked overtime, converting the cacophony into words he could understand. The human has violated Protocol 7 of the Interspecies Commerce Agreement, declared High Arbitrator Vextel. A towering creature with 6 arms and skin that shifted between purple and silver. His interference in the Kepler Station incident resulted in significant financial losses for the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. Marcus kept his face neutral, though anger simmered beneath the surface. He had saved 300 lives when the station's life support failed. But apparently that meant nothing compared to the profit margins of alien corporations. The penalty is clear, continued another arbitrator, this one resembling a crystalline spider. Assignment of a burden mate according to traditional law. Let the human bear responsibility for one who cannot contribute to society. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of translation devices. Marcus had heard whispers about burden mates during his 3 years in space, but the concept remained foreign to him. On Earth, taking care of those who couldn't care for themselves was considered an honor. Not a punishment. A side door slid open with a pneumatic hiss and 2 guards escorted a figure into the chamber. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The being they brought forward was unmistakably female, though not entirely human. She stood about 5.5 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the chamber's artificial light. Her hair was white as starlight, flowing past her shoulders in waves that moved as if underwater. Most striking were her eyes, completely black. Like looking into the depths of space itself, she wore simple gray robes that marked her as someone of no status. But she carried herself with quiet dignity despite the chains around her wrists. Those weren't real chains, Marcus realized, but some kind of energy restraint that kept her hands bound in front of her. This is Lirelei of the Astral Reaches, announced Arbitrator Vextel. She is what you humans might call a widow. Her mate died in service to the Galactic Fleet, leaving her without purpose or protection. In our society, such individuals become burdens on the state. As your punishment, human, you will be responsible for her care, her housing, her sustenance, and her conduct. Any crime she commits will be added to your record. Any debt she incurs will be yours to pay. Marcus looked at the woman, Lirelei, and saw something flicker in those dark eyes. Not fear exactly, but a deep weariness that spoke of loss beyond measure. She hadn't asked to be here any more than he had. Furthermore, the arbitrator continued, you are both assigned to the frontier world of Kalios Prime, where you will establish and maintain a mining survey station. The work is dangerous, the conditions harsh, and the pay minimal. You will remain there for no less than 5 Earth years, or until the debt of your interference has been paid in full. The crystalline arbitrator spoke up, its voice like breaking glass. The human may refuse this assignment, of course. The alternative is 15 years in a penal colony on Zarian, where the gravity is 3 times Earth normal and the atmosphere will slowly poison your lungs. Marcus almost smiled. They thought they were being clever, giving him an impossible choice. What they didn't understand was that humans thrived on impossible situations. "I accept the assignment," he said without hesitation. Liralay's head turned toward him, surprise evident on her features. She had expected him to choose the prison, he realized. Everyone expected humans to take the easy path, to avoid responsibility for others. "Excellent," Vexthal said with what might have been satisfaction. "You will depart for Kelios Prime within the solar day. Guard Captain Zikaner will provide you with the necessary documentation and equipment." As the arbitrators filed out of the chamber, a hulking reptilian guard approached Marcus and Liralay. Captain Zikaner stood 8 feet tall and looked like he could bite through starship hull plating. "Come," Zikaner rumbled, his translator making his voice sound like distant thunder. "We have much to discuss before your departure." They were led through a maze of corridors to a sparse briefing room where Zikaner spread several data tablets across a metal table. "Kelios Prime," he began, activating a holographic display that showed a rust-colored world with 2 small moons. "Former mining world, abandoned 30 years ago when the primary or deposits were exhausted. Your job is to survey for new deposits and establish a basic extraction operation if you find anything worthwhile." The hologram shifted to show the planet's surface. Endless. Rocky plains broken by deep canyons and jagged mountain ranges. Atmosphere is breathable for most species, though the oxygen content is lower than Earth normal. Gravity is 0.8 Earth standard. Wildlife is minimal but includes several species of predators that hunt in packs. Marcus studied the display, his military training automatically cataloging threats and opportunities. "What about shelter? Existing infrastructure?" "There is one abandoned facility near the equator," Zikaner replied. "Basic life support, but you will need to repair most systems yourself. Supply runs are scheduled every 6 months, assuming you maintain regular communication with Fleet Command." The guard's attention shifted to Liralay, who had remained silent throughout the briefing. "You understand your position in this arrangement?" She nodded slowly. "I'm chattel. Property to be maintained." Zikaner made a sound that might have been approval. "Precisely. The human is responsible for your actions. If you flee, he will be hunted. If you steal, he will pay restitution. If you die through negligence, he will face charges of criminal neglect." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "And what exactly is she supposed to do on this mining world? Sit in a corner and look decorative?" The reptilian's head swiveled toward him. "That is not our concern. She is your burden to bear, human. How you choose to bear it is irrelevant." An hour later, Marcus found himself aboard a small transport vessel with Liralay and a cargo hold full of basic mining equipment. The ship was automated, requiring no crew, which meant they would have several days of travel time to figure out how this arrangement was supposed to work. Liralay had chosen a seat near the rear of the passenger compartment and sat staring out a small porthole at the stars sliding past. The energy restraints around her wrist had been removed once they boarded, but she rubbed at the marks they had left. Marcus settled into the seat across from her, close enough to talk without raising his voice over the ship's engines. "So," he said after a moment, "want to tell me what actually happened to your husband?" Those black eyes fixed on him with startling intensity. "You do not know?" "I know what they told me in the chamber. I'm guessing that's not the whole story." Liralay was quiet for so long that Marcus began to think she wouldn't answer. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yarrick was a communications officer aboard the dreadnought Infinite Dawn 3 months ago. The ship was assigned to patrol the Outer Rim sectors, watching for pirate activity." She paused, her hands clenching in her lap. "They encountered a distress signal from a civilian transport carrying refugees from the Hadrian system. 50,000 beings, mostly families with children." Marcus waited, sensing there was more. The transport was under attack by raiders. The Dawn could have driven them off easily, but the captain Liralay's voice grew bitter. The captain said it was not their mission, that civilian protection was not their responsibility. Narek disagreed. He sent an unauthorized transmission to the raiders, identifying the Dawn and demanding they withdraw. Let me guess, Marcus said grimly. The raiders fled, the civilians were saved, and your husband was court-martialed for insubordination. Worse, Liralay whispered. The captain claimed Yarek had violated operational security by revealing their position to hostiles. He was stripped of rank and sentenced to serve in the penal legions. The work is... She shuddered. They sent him to clear landmines on contested worlds. Life expectancy is measured in days, not years. Marcus felt a familiar anger building in his chest. He had seen this kind of bureaucratic cruelty before, usually from officers more concerned with their careers than their duty. Yarek lasted longer than most, Liralay continued. Nearly 2 months. But eventually, she trailed off, unable to finish. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and meant it. He sounds like he was a good man. He was... Liralay wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. But in their society, I am nothing without him. A widow has no rights, no property, no voice. I'm considered a burden on the state until someone claims responsibility for me or until I die. Marcus leaned back in his seat, processing what she had told him. No wonder she had looked surprised when he accepted the assignment. Most beings in the galaxy would have chosen prison over taking responsibility for someone else's welfare. What about your family? He asked. Your people? Liralay's expression grew even sadder. I have no people anymore. My world was destroyed in the Hadrian conflict. I was off-planet when it happened, visiting Yarek at his assignment. When I tried to return, she shrugged helplessly. Nothing left but asteroids and radiation. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Hadrian system. He had